Stephen Merchant has written and directed a movie. It's called Fighting With My Family. I'm delighted to say Stephen is here in the studio. How are you doing, Stephen?
Very well. Thank you for having me, guys. It's a thrill to be here.
It's very nice to see you. And actually,
long-time listener, first-time guest.
Thank you very much indeed.
Is this the first time you've been on?
Yeah.
New category.
Did you not come on for Cemetery Junction?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I don't remember that.
I don't think so. So there is a point in going to the webcam because actually you get more than just Mark and me. You actually get Stephen.
You get finally a bit of this showbiz glamour.
Yes.
That I bring. Why are you guys chuckling? That doesn't seem fair.
Well, I think we were being led down the chucklesome path. How did you get involved with this film? Because there's so much to talk about, but I'm intrigued as to the how you started down this line of writing and production and direction.
Well, it began life as a documentary that was on Channel 4, and it was a documentary not seen by me, but seen instead by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Do you call him The Rock, or do you Rock?
I call him Rock, I call him Dwayne, I call him DJ.
Do you really?
Yes, absolutely. He's got many nicknames, and I'd never seen the documentary. He saw it. He was here. He was filming Fast and Furious 6 in London. Couldn't sleep one night. Was watching Channel 4, which I think is a lovely image of just Dwayne just flipping through the British channels. He's on Channel 4. He never misses grand designs,
of course.
And on comes this documentary about this family of wrestlers from Norwich. Mum, dad, all the kids. Everyone wrestles. Family dream is to get the kids into WWE. You know, the big leagues of wrestling in America, and he, coming from a wrestling family, kind of felt a great affinity for this story and ended up becoming tangentially involved in their lives. And somewhere along the line recognised that it could be a potential Rocky-style sort of underdog story. I had known him because I did a movie with him in 2010 called Tooth Fairy. Just pause there while the fans listening just stand up and applaud.
Yeah.
And
it's a very, very short pause.
It's a very short pause. And all right, Mark, come on, mate. And then... so he sent me the documentary because he was looking for a British writer, and we'd hit it off on that movie. And I watched the documentary, not expecting to be interested in something about wrestling, having never followed wrestling, and just like him, just fell in love with this family.
It's
just won over. It's really entertaining, and it's funny because you sit down, I think, expecting to sneer and laugh at this family, and you end up falling for them, and you're rooting for them. And I went to meet them, and I just sort of, I just felt that there was so much more story to tell, and that's what we've made.
And I guess if Dwayne Johnson comes to you, even though you were mates from having appeared in the same movie, if he says, "What do you think?" you must have been intrigued, because for him to come to you and say, "I've watched this documentary, I'd like you to get involved," your interest must have been piqued, to say the least.
It is, and also I think if The Rock says do something, you damn well do it, because it's The Rock. What am I? I'm an idiot. He's the biggest movie star in the world. I'm going to pay attention. And I think he's got he's got good instincts for these things, and he was right. There was a really cool story, but it wasn't until I met the family, hung out with them, met the real people, that I began to realise there was a full 3-act movie there, because the documentary didn't cover all of the intrigue of the story.
Did he want you to write it or direct it or both?
I think probably initially he was thinking of me as a writer, but at some point, I sort of threw my hat in the ring for directing as well.
You took him aside, you got him in a headlock, and you said, "I'm directing.
I'm directing this one, Rock." I'm 2 inches taller than The Rock, so I think he's probably a little intimidated by me, and so it was easy to pressure him into letting me direct.
Yeah, I'd like to have seen that fight. I think that'd be so. At what stage in the maybe the conversation with the family did you think, actually, I want this to be mine? I don't just want to write it. I actually want to tell this story.
Well, the core of the documentary, which is very effective, is the fact that the brother and sister, they've been raised in this wrestling family. They're playing to tiny venues in tiny towns around Norfolk, and they get the chance to audition for WWE, and it's huge. And I didn't know anything about wrestling, but like Billy Elliot wanting to be a ballet dancer, you don't need to be interested in this thing in order to be rooting for them. And so I was on board with them. And then when the brother Zach got rejected and the sister Paige got signed, I just thought that was so heartbreaking. That feeling of, you always assumed you'd do this thing together, you'd live this dream together, and now only one of you's got that opportunity. And that felt like the real heart of the story. But once I spoke to them, I discovered that, how did he come back from that? How did he recover from that rejection? What did she experience in America? She's now gone there. She's living this dream for herself and for her family. And then, without giving too much away, it laid for me a kind of big Rocky-style finale that was there in the true story that was sort of an open invitation for the ending of our movie. So that was where I thought, oh, well, this is such a lovely British story, but with the kind of scale and size of a Hollywood production.
There's a moment in the documentary when, after the brother hasn't got in, and they've told him that it's to do with, body shape and that he has to put on certain pounds of muscle and that kind of stuff, and he's sitting in a pub and he's got a pint and he's explaining, he's saying, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to do this and I've got to, and he says, so I'm in a really good position, and the camera just holds on him for about 5 seconds of him just holding his pint, saying, and it's a heartbreaking moment, because on the one hand he is very, on the other hand it is clearly his heart has been sort of broken by the position that he's in, but he's also looking for the positive, and you can see that in him. I think it's a lovely moment.
And I think that part of the documentary is revealing, because that, as I discovered, he was putting on quite a front for the documentary, and that actually he took the rejection very hard, and that's, I think, what gives the dramatic core of the film. And although I think, we've tried to make a film that's very funny and entertaining, and it's not, a heavy drama, but nevertheless there's real emotion and pathos, at the centre of it, which I think is what sort of, hopefully, again, there's many sort of sports movies about people of exceptional talent, but what about those people that get left behind, And I thought that just perhaps made it in some ways particularly British. I think we like to sort of celebrate, I wouldn't say the failures, but the other folk, as well as the people that are exceptional.
I was halfway through the film, and I know you listen to the show occasionally, and we have one of the regular things that comes up with listeners is that Mark always said about Jaws that it's not about the shark,
right?
And that there was a movie that what was the film that wasn't about spies?
Bridge of Spies.
No, it wasn't.
Bridge of Spies was a lot about spies.
No, Bridge of Spies is about spies. The film that isn't about...
Tinker Tailor
Soldier Spy. Right. Thank you very much.
Which you said it's not about spies.
It's not about spies. That's about men lying in rooms.
But it is about spying.
Spying, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so... and which is an interesting train of thought, because then you say, is Dad's Army actually about the Home Guard? And actually, obviously, your film is about wrestling, but actually, it's bigger. It's that bigger drama,
right?
Isn't it? Actually, it's not about wrestling. It's about how families work together and about what really matters. Oh, it sounds though we're heading down a cheesy route, but it isn't cheesy at all. But that's the heart of your film, isn't it?
Well, that was the thing, and I think that's the thing that's quite hard to convey in a trailer or in a little bit of blurb about the film, is that, I think a lot of people, including myself, have a sort of very specific reaction to wrestling, often, which is, I'm not interested, or even a snobbery that it's a kind of this other silly thing for silly people. But sort of in developing the film and in kind of meeting the family, as you say, it's, if you're a wrestling fan, I think you'll enjoy it. But I really worked very hard for the non-wrestling fan to respond to this, because, like you say, it felt like there's so much more meat on the bone about family, about siblings, about ambition, about being alone in another country, and the responsibility of making this dream come true for the people you've left behind, and feeling like an outsider, and how do you stay true to who you are, and particularly in the face of a world which says we're not interested in who you are, and so. Like you say, that it's a bit like when we did The Office. It's not about a paper factory, they just happen to be selling paper, and similarly here.
Let's play a clip from the film, and maybe that snobbish attitude that you were talking about is presumably what informs your character and your wife's character. If you just set that up, and we've got you and your wife and Nick Frost in this clip. So explain who's who here.
Well, one of the stories that the real family told me was that they had to meet the parents of their son Zach's girlfriend for the first time, and it was a classic meet the parents moment. But they are a working class wrestling family, tattooed, mohawks, and they are meeting this much more middle class, if you like, traditional British family. And it seemed very funny to me that, firstly, if you're going to need an uptight English guy, who do you go to? It's the merch man. And just that idea of the clash of those two worlds seemed like an entertaining opportunity.
Then here's the clip.
How did you get into wrestling?
It is quite a romantic story.
We like romantic stories.
Oh, right, we like this one. Well, when I met Rick, I was homeless, abused, living on the street,
Yep.
I myself had done 8 years in prison.
Prison? What was that for?
Mainly violence.
Mainly violence, yeah.
Bit of armed robbery,
Anyway, I came back to the flat one night and there was guns, money on the table, everything.
So there was guns and...
Money.
Guns and money,
yeah.
Right.
You'd done a job, hadn't you? And I looked at him.
The look said, essentially, Ricky, turn your back on crime, otherwise I'm going to turn my back on you.
And he did.
That's what I did.
Never looked back. Some people find religion, but wrestling, we found wrestling, didn't we? It was our salvation.
We found each other and all.
Yeah.
I should say, in that clip, you're doing a lot of facial acting.
I'm, Simon, at the risk of sounding immodest, I'm one of the great reactors. And this was a role that needed a lot of reacting. Very little dialogue, if I'm honest, but a lot of good facial reacting. And so when you've got me lying around set, why not throw me on camera?
Because I wonder, a lot of people will think if they're wrestling fans, they'll know this story. But I hadn't heard of Paige. I hadn't heard this story. And why is that? Is that because wrestling is not considered a proper sport by a lot of people, and because you do address this in the film, it's sort of soap opera, and the issue of whether it's real,
fixed, not fake, is the
fixed,
key
not
line.
fake, and all that. Is that one of the reasons why we don't know this story?
Well, I thought it was interesting that, I've worked with Olivia Colman, I've worked with Claire Foy. They are both amazing actors, and they deserve every piece of attention and plaudit that they get. They are extraordinary. But isn't it interesting that there are lots of sort of newspaper articles and BBC interviews celebrating their success in America, and rightly so. But it's interesting that Paige, the real girl, went from a working class home in Norwich all the way to the top of another strand of show business, wrestling, and there were none of those broadsheet profiles and none of those sort of in-depth radio interviews celebrating this woman. And like you, I had never heard of her, and I wondered, why is that? And now I don't know why. I suspect it's a little to do with snobbery. It's a little to do with kind of wrestling being dismissed a bit as this thing that the people that voted for Brexit like, and maybe it's because she's this slightly in-your-face kind of alternative grungy kid from this working class background. I don't know, but it's just interesting, I think, that she wasn't applauded for her success. And I don't quite know what the answer is, but I sort of feel proud in a way that we are able to address that.
There's a lovely moment in that clip that we just heard in which she says, I did time for mainly violence, which of course actually literally happens in the documentary. Yeah. He pauses and his wife says, mainly violence. It's mainly violence.
Yeah.
Tell us about Florence Pugh, because I think she's so much the heart and soul of the film, and it looks like not only is she a great actor, which we know anyway, but it does look like she's genuinely getting thrown around quite a lot.
She is, and it was very important to me that we had someone in that role who could do as much of the wrestling as possible to give it some authenticity.
And she's very gung-ho.
She's very gung-ho, but it was a very difficult role to cast because the real Paige, without giving too much away, did have enormous success, has enormous charisma, has been wrestling since she was 13, is a great, show person, and so we needed someone who was willing to do all of that and could do all of that, but also could convince as a working class kid from Norwich, and also good enough actor to carry this movie on her shoulders. And she's only I think Florence was 19 or 20 when we shot the movie, and of the 60 odd girls I saw for that part, she was the one that won out. And she went to Florida, she trained to do some of the wrestling, and the fourth day of filming she had to walk out in front of 20,000 die-hard WWE wrestling fans and recreate this match. And it was very complicated for that audience, because I think they understand there's an artificiality about wrestling, but suddenly, of course, this actress comes out, she does a few moves, they cheer her on, and then she pauses while we bring in a stunt woman to do the more dangerous stuff. Yeah. And now they can see the artifice, and now they just turn on her and they're like, boo! And Florence said she looked across, she saw an 8-year-old boy just screaming, "You suck!" Because they got so confused that we were, if you like, pulling back the curtain on how it's phony in some ways.
But that hour that you were given,
yes,
must have been the most tense you were throughout the whole of the, because you weren't going to get this hour again, because it's a big, when we see the movie, there are scores of thousands of people.
Yes, we didn't have CGI money, so we couldn't artificially generate, a computer crowd. So we had to use real people. And yes, we couldn't afford 20,000 extras. The WWE gave us 1 hour after one of their Monday night telecasts, and it was very, very nerve wracking. And we took Dwayne down there, and Dwayne kind of emceed the event. But I said to him, "Dwayne, we've only got an hour. Please don't get carried away." He went in the ring. He did 20 minutes on the mic, talking to the fans. He's doing the catchphrases. "Can you smell what the Rock's cooking?" "Yes, we can smell, mate. Get out the ring." It was unbelievable. But I have to say, when you see that guy in front of a wrestling crowd, I mean, he played them like an orchestra. He got them to cheer and boo and everything. I mean, it was kind of extraordinary.
Mick Thompson says, "My wife, Debbie, and I went to a preview screening of Fighting With My Family last week. Absolutely loved it. Probably one of the best feel-good films we've ever seen. So good, in fact, that we were crying with joy at various points. A wonderful piece of work. Can you thank Stephen for cheering us both up?"
Thank you very much. That's lovely.
On our various social channels, Stephen,
we have many. We're very multimedia.
Finding out what people's wrestling name is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And basically, we decided that you'd take the last place you went on holiday and the last appliance you used. Okay. So we had Laura Fortune says she's the Torquay kettle.
Yep.
Rosie Waters is the Anglesey hand dryer. Richard Kay is the Torremolinos shredder.
Yep.
Morag Lyle is the Pompey electric toothbrush. I'll remove your plaque. Ash Stead says fear irreparable damage at the hand of the Corfu George Foreman. David Logan, I think, probably wins. He says, say hello to the Munich hand blender.
That's great. That's terrific.
David Hurd says, I'm not sure that the Phuket Nespresso will strike fear into the hearts of men. What's your wrestling name if we take the last place you went on holiday and the last appliance you used?
And the last appliance I used?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness me. I think this is pretty cool. The Vietnamese blender.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Not bad.
I
That's very
can
good.
offer the Albany cold water dispenser.
Yeah, I'm,
Nice.
I'm the Cornish coffee maker.
Can I tell you my real wrestling persona that I came up with? Because when I was doing some research into this, Dwayne told me, I call him Dwayne, or DJ, he said, what's important with wrestling is you should take a part of yourself and you should dial it up to 100, you know? And I thought, well, okay, I'm a British writer, so I would come out dressed as Shakespeare. But I would have a white ruff around the neck, but I'd be shirtless. My catchphrase would be I'd say things like, to beat you or not to beat you. That is the question. A little play on the Merchant of Venice. I would be known as the Merchant of Menace. And my finishing move, not Hamlet, Slamlet.
Very
All right?
good.
I'll leave that with you guys.
This is a whole sequence that you've got. So to the people who would say, well, I mean, and as we mentioned, you do address this in the film, that it's not sport because it is not, it's not a proper competition, because I get the feeling when I'm watching it that it is scripted.
Yes.
Can you explain what it is that we're watching? Is it sport? Is it the soap opera that you described?
It's interesting that WWE call themselves sports entertainment, and I think that probably sums it up. And actually, in writing the film, the challenge was, unlike, say, Rocky, where you understand that when he knocks Apollo Creed out, that is very meaningful and he's won that by sheer brute force. Unlike in wrestling, where, as we say in the film, it's fixed. And so the outcome is often predetermined. Now, therefore, what is the victory for this young woman? Well, actually, the real victory, which again I discovered, is not whether or not she wins a match, but it's can she win over the crowd. The crowd is the thing which keeps you a star. They make you a star. They will boo you, and you will destroy your career if they don't take to you as a performer. And so in a way, it's as much a kind of Rocky story, but it's also a sort of show business entertainment story, a bit like, like a classic musical where the kid from the chorus line gets her chance on Broadway. It's that as much as it's a sports film. It's a sort of, it's a hybrid in a sense.
You used to be a film critic. In fact, because you're a long-time colleague of James King.
Yeah.
And you were a film critic before you became a filmmaker. Do you think it's one or t'other? Did you think, I wanted to be a film critic, but then I became a filmmaker?
I remember seeing Swingers starring Vince Vaughn, who's in my movie, which therefore makes this feel like some kind of end of some kind of journey. And I remember seeing Swingers, and I remember falling in love with it, thinking that this was a group of friends. They'd got together, they made a low-budget movie. It seemed to be drawn very much from their experience. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can do this anymore as a reviewer. I think I want to be on the other side of the
So that was the thing that made you think, I want to make films?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I always wanted, but I think that was the more I thought, oh, maybe I can do this. And there was a point at which I felt, I need to kind of put the cap on my pen and no longer write the reviews, but instead try and get them written about me.
It's also worth saying that, that you co-directed Cemetery Junction, but I've been directed by you.
You have,
which I'm very proud of.
How come?
I was myself in extras, and I'm on it for, I think it's 3 seconds, but I think there's a longer viral version in which it's 4.5 seconds. I believe so. And
well, we asked Mark just to give a review of Ricky's fake sitcom within extras, and I don't think Mark had seen any clip of it, but just improvised an extraordinary kind of
he's full of it.
perfect review.
I was very, very full of it. But the advice you gave me, you said, be yourself.
That's
and
right.
And I think I did that better than Gordon Ramsay did.
You did.
in the film in which he played himself.
James Southby says, a couple of nights ago I attended the Dublin International Film Festival screening of Fighting with My Family at the really quite excellent Lighthouse Cinema, which included a Q&A with your man, Stephen Merchant,
Yes.
which was a treat in itself. I really enjoyed the film. As a wrestling fan in my teenage years, I was already familiar with the story of Paige and her family of Norwich wrestlers, and enough of a nerd to spot the tiny anachronisms in the film compared to real life. None of that mattered, however, as Paige's story is extremely relatable, combining a Rocky-esque rags-to-riches tale with a teen angsty will-I-fit-in story. Nick Frost stole every scene he was in, even up against old Dwayne, and I even enjoyed Vince Vaughn's deadpan performance, words I never thought I'd say, or indeed type. Stu Bell, despite knowing absolutely nothing about professional wrestling, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it beyond expectations. The film embraced enough sports film tropes, the outsider from a poor background, the struggle to make it and so on, without slipping into cliche. The humour was perfectly pitched, bravo Mr. Merchant, and the cast were note perfect. Nick Frost as ever, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson looking like he was having a riot playing himself. And even Vince Vaughn reminding us that on his day he can still act. The real standout, though, is the lead actress Florence Pugh as Paige, one to watch for sure. A good, fun Brit flick, which will hopefully play well internationally. On that subject, I mean, it obviously is British, it feels British, but there is enough of that international American kick to it in the last third, which must give it some legs stateside, do you think?
Well, you'd hope so, yes. But I always wanted it to sort of stay, at feeling British and feeling authentic. But I wanted it to have a chance at succeeding internationally, and because it's not often that you get given these Rocky-style stories that kind of you feel could translate. And I've been very pleased about the response in America and watching it with audiences. And I always think it's funny because there's one or two lines that are uniquely British. There's a moment where Nick Frost kisses Florence's head, and she's without giving too much away, she's had her hair dyed, and he says, "Oh, it's like kissing an Afghan." And I always think that I'm not sure they refer to Afghan hounds in America as Afghans. So are they thinking, is it like kissing a person from Afghanistan? Like, I wonder what the American audience is making of that line.
And what did the real Paige make of the movie? Did you watch it with them?
I took the film to Florida where she was training to see it. I left her in a room watching. I didn't want to stand there and kind of scrutinise her the whole way through. And I was at the WWE itself, and she texted me after the film had finished and said, "Do you mind coming back in the room? I don't want to come out because I'm in tears and I don't want the other wrestlers to see me crying," which was very, very sweet. And she was very pleased.
Stepping back in the room so I can body slam you.
Yes, exactly. Well, that was the anxiety. He was showing it to the dad more than anything. I mean, he's had, by his own admission, as you said, mainly violence. In his past. And so you're a little bit jumpy about showing it to him, particularly as he told me up front, "I want Ray Winston to play me." It took me a long time to work up the nerve that I was casting Nick Frost.
And has this given you the taste, Stephen, is this going to be what you stay doing? Having crossed the line now, are you going to be a director?
Well, I've always for some reason, from those early days of seeing Swingers, I've always rather fancied myself as a director. I've always sort of slightly considered myself, I just hadn't directed any movies, so I sort of feel like, oh yeah, finally here I am, doing what I should have done, but I'd love to. Where did that come from? Where did that thought that you were a director even if you weren't come from? I remember, this is embarrassing, well, because I studied film at university and I was always a fan of it. And I remember saying when we went for meetings with The Office, they said, "You want to direct it as well?" And I remember honestly saying, without a shred of irony, "Well, I might be the next Orson Welles." And they went, "Well, you might not be." And I went, "Well, we don't know." And I genuinely, in my naivety, I didn't, none of us know. I might be.
So what are you doing next?
Given that this film was a documentary that landed in my lap thanks to the biggest film star in the world, I'm just hoping another movie star will send me another idea. That's what I'm hoping for now. If any are listening, please get in touch.
Stephen, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me. Thanks,
Fighting with My Family is the new movie written and directed by Stephen Merchant.